You do not own things or people. You are things and people. Now, this might sound a bit confusing or, daunting probably to some. But the question is, how can you actually be things, right? Or even people? Because, finally speaking, if we are to make a, like a big pun, many people think they own shit, aka things that don't value anything. And does it mean they are shit? Well, no, I wasn't heading that way. But this night I actually had this revelation in a way that, I am surrounded by people just like most of you are who think they own stuff, right? They own things, and well, worse than that, they think they own people, right? I've said that this idea of meaning, right? This self destruction thingy called meaning is nothing else than a collective game. Every meaning that exists, except personal meaning, is nothing else than a collective agreement. Money exists because people have agreed for it to exist, right? Words, languages, even if in the ultimate case, right? Ultimately, countries, languages, and the such are nothing else than a grand illusion of separation. The point is, they just exist because people embrace that. They just believe that, dying for your country is the best thing. But you're not born on this world to simply die for something that doesn't even exist. If you praise something that doesn't exist, well, it kind of means that you're having a problem with your mind, right? Because, if something doesn't exist, it simply doesn't exist, collectively speaking. But if some individuals prefer that that exists, well, we kind of end up believing in nonsense, aka religion. But the point is, people have to learn their own lessons, people have to learn their own ideas. Now, regarding the topic, we have created this world in which, all that we do is we try to bypass our insecurities, right? And our fears. Because insecurities are still fears. What do I mean? Well, technically, people get too attached to their physical body, right? And they think that the physicality that they see around is the only thing that can exist, right? Which causes a lot of pain and frustration. Because the point is, you want to own things, but wanting means that we acknowledge you don't have that, right? So technically you're thinking that you don't have it, right? Think about this as I call, the yandere syndrome, right? So many people are somewhat obsessed with this, and probably people know about yanderes at least a bit from, animes. This term doesn't exist in psychiatry, but if it were, it includes a huge variety of, let's say, disorders, right? Like narcissism, sociopathy, and, well, probably a bit of psychopathy. It can go to a very great list of things. And let's not forget codependency. Codependency is a huge problem in the world because what codependency means is you're turning someone into an extension of yourself, right? You think that without someone, your life sucks. So the point about this is you don't own that person, right? The point is you're not even with them, right? It's just their turn to suffer with you and your turn to suffer with them. Because that's what codependency means. You're gonna suffer alongside a person because you simply don't want to wake up that that person is not good for you, and most likely, obviously, to the first extent, you have to realize that you're also not good for them. The biggest problem, or one of the biggest social problems, is that people don't simply realize how much of a pain they are to others, right? Because if you're a dick, the point is, you can't see how much a dick you are. Because, again, of becoming accustomed to who you think you are, right? You're not something, right? You are simply nothing. You came here without any attachment. You create all these attachments, or, more obviously, you take them from others, right? You see your parents being attached to things, you think that, well, that's the only way possible. Then you see your friends, right? Your peers, and obviously they do as their parents say. Again, you're inclined to say, well, this is the only way, right? Obviously, you have to fight against your discernment because discernment is a sin in a society of slaves, right? If you have discernment, well, that's not good because you're intimidating to people who simply don't want to assume responsibility, right? Because imagine having the freedom to assume responsibility, but that's always a scary thing for people who don't, right? There is no such thing as people in this world who cannot, naturally speaking, assume responsibility. Unless, of course, they suffer from a certain type of impairment at any type of level, right? But the point is, any of the people who are normal, they simply cannot take responsibility, right? It's just that they don't want. So the point is, if they don't want to take responsibility, they basically don't care. If they don't care, the point is they won't care about you either. So the point is, if you see this red flag, why the fuck are you still spending time with that person? Oh yes, because, well, people are also taught in this world that, pain is the only way to go. So basically, your suffering is the only thing to experience in life, right? We also have religion, and well, religion teaches you that you're always at the mercy of a single entity or a group of entities, right? And you need other people for, religious validation, right? Because this is another narcissistic thing, right? The only way you can express yourself is through other people's validation, right? Again, this is another meaning that we have collectively agreed upon. Because people are agreeing upon all these pains and they're embracing them, lying themselves that, it is the only way. Because if this wasn't the only way, and obviously it isn't, the point is they would have to take responsibility to make their life better. But they don't want to leave their comfort zone, right? Doesn't this sound like pure psychiatry? Because the point is, if you're embracing pain as your only existence, well, that kind of means a trip to the psychiatry anyways. Because that pain you're gonna amplify so much that you're also gonna want to inflict upon others. And you're gonna do it unconsciously because, well, misery loves company, right? Or as I call it, misery loves company. Now, when it comes to owning things, right? People's insecurity will always be, the fear of the so-called ego will be that you will lose those things, right? You want to own a house, obviously your first fear is that you won't own that house, right? Once you get it, well, you'll fear that you lose it, right? It's what I call the yandere syndrome. You never trust anything. Although in anime, usually yanderes are portrayed as, being highly confident. But it is a skill called, well, replicating confidence. Because they don't trust much. All that they want is the person they are obsessed with, and again I underline they want, just like so many people want, right? Ultimately, it's not a want, right? Well, in their case, in such case, well, most people can easily classify for this, well, not being fully fledged yanderes, but they can actually tend towards this a bit at least. How? Well, a yandere is basically someone who is emotionally numb. People can't, or there can be situations in which people are naturally born emotionally numbed, but the point is, usually this emotional numbness is transmitted by parents from the earliest stages of life. If you are born as a toy that wasn't simply meant to be born, obviously from the first years you won't be getting any of the love you need, so basically by the time you are 2 or 3 years of age, the point is you're already gonna feel numbed because, well, if you don't receive the emotions that you need, you're gonna feel and you're gonna think that they are useless. So the point is you're gonna be emotionally numb. The point is, when you meet someone who can trigger a certain emotion in you, you'll probably like that. So the point is, you're not gonna like the person who triggered that necessarily. You're first of all gonna like the emotion that you felt for the first time. And, of course, seeking to replicate that emotion, the logical step to take is that you would want to replicate the situation, right? So, obviously, a situation usually can't be replicated because you need to be in the exact same circumstances. But the point is, you can, say, well, I can't replicate the situation, but that person triggered that emotion in me. So, a desperation to feel even more of that liveliness, because emotion, aka liveliness, right? They're, one and the same. They're actually perfect synonyms. And obviously, you're probably gonna end up in all the pain and frustrations that you have. You're gonna end up believing that without that being, well, your life will suck, right? Now, the point, of course, is yanderes will always go to the furthest depths, right? They'll even kill, torture, or whatever. But the point is, up till that point, many people are easy peasy, as I call them, baby yanderes, right? Because, well, all that you want is that being, right? But you basically want the emotion, not that being necessarily. Because when you want something, it's not a specific target, right? It's just the egotistical gain, right? It's just the competition, or as I call it, the competition, right? Why? Because you want to own that. When you want something, you automatically own it, right? Haven't I made a video? Oh yes, actually I made a video in which, I forgot the name, but the point is, people when they speak, they always speak of possession, right? Because you are not with someone, you are theirs, right? Even when you speak, right? You say my boyfriend, my girlfriend, right? You always say my. My equals want. When you say my, it automatically means that you don't want that person. You can fool yourself and make a clown of yourself. You can swear me in the comments and say the whole world's. It's simply like that. Psychology and psychiatry never lie. Okay, they can be wrong in certain situations, yes, that's why I don't embrace them fully. But when it comes to the mechanics of the mind, those are hard coded and they are just like programming. The way they were made, you cannot bypass that. The point is, when you say my, you speak of possession. You have an impression that you own that person, right? Because why on earth would you say my, right? You also say my parents, right? It's like you own them, but well, if you give them your power, technically they own you. Because the point is, when you give your power to someone, you are technically becoming that person. As I said in the beginning, you are people. You don't own them, right? When you have the impression that you own people, you actually are those people, or you try to be those people, right? Think about narcissists, right? What they want is validation. What they want is attention. The point is, people will give them power, right? And narcissists, at the same time, they will also give people a sense of power, a bit of their power, because it's all about the narcissistic place. You want that validation, right? And to narcissists, they always want that validation, right? Most of the people nowadays function like this because you're born in a society where people pleasing is the only religion, right? You don't need to kiss God in the butt because ultimately God doesn't exist, or at least the way we imagine them. Now the point is with people pleasing is, well, people pleasing is basically creating a pantheon, right? You see any being as a kind of a deity and you want to simply worship it, right? What technically this means is that, well, you are that people, right? You don't own them. Many people use people pleasing as a sense of control because they please other people, but they do it for control because they will see probably that people enjoy being people pleased, so it means that instant gratification, right? Think about dogs. Dogs are canines, okay? Canines can walk a lot, okay? Like, they are the most robust terrestrial beings. Canines can actually walk, even 30, 40, 50 kilometers, okay? In search for food. Now, the point is, why would a dog do that, right? When they can instantly get their food, right? The only reason why a dog spends their time with you is not because they're loyal, okay? Yes, sure, dogs can be loyal, yes. Many dogs can. Let's not forget that generalization is also a disease. But a dog will mainly stay with someone because instant food, right? Why would I need to brave, bad weather conditions, right? Other creatures, right? Like, I don't know, other packs of dogs or other dangers, right? Like humans, right? When you can simply give your power to someone and they can actually, feed you, right? The point is, the dog isn't necessarily giving you the power entirely, but well, in many cases they kind of do, because the comfort zone is the most important point of any unconscious being, right? Because you have been born to aim for the best life. Technically, when the dog gives their power to you, they are kind of living their best life. They don't have to forage for food, so it's like that which was the most important thing is kind of dealt with. But when people use attachments, right, they're just doing bondage stuff. They're just binding themselves to concepts, and well, that's kind of it, right? They're making their life worse, but they're at the same time thinking that their life is better, right? Doesn't this equate to psychiatry? So the point is, you don't own things, right? You just have these two little fears, right? You have a fear that you're not good enough, or you're not, well, let's put it shortly, you're not ever gonna, own that thing, right? That is why people are capable and willing to sacrifice so much. Then, furthermore, once you happen to gain that, your low self-esteem will induce a fear that you will obviously lose it, because that's what ownership means. Ownership only means a fear of losing that what you have, right? And obviously, when you think you own people, you're always gonna be afraid that they wake up and they leave, right? That's how many parents actually think. That's why many people actually cut the wings of their children, and they don't allow their discernment to exist, because you'll be surprised, but many people actually know they are douchebags, but they simply don't want to change because comfort zone is the best thing, right, for unconscious people. So the point is, well, the point is with owning, right, is that this is nothing else than a game of psychiatry we are playing, right? Because the point is, do you own anything in this world? Well, if you say yes, think about one thing. There will come one moment when you will simply leave the body, right? The physical body has its moment when it will become the least compatible with life, so be it that you want to live an eternity or not, guess what? You will be leaving this body, right? It doesn't matter if you put yourself into a cybernetic body, into a metal body, an elemental body, a physical body, biological, whatever, okay? If it is physical, it is limited. It doesn't matter. When life wants to leave, it will leave. You can preserve it in there for more time, yes. Usually it comes with great pain, like being tied to machines because your fucking family wants to preserve you even more, right? Like they haven't cared for you for 80 years, now you're freaking on your deathbed, but no, they want you to live 3 more months tied to machines, right? That's torture, right? That's awful torture, right? And they actually agree, right? At the same time, the hospitals can't even care because, well, it's not that they're getting paid, but, they're not instructed to understand things beyond the physical. They are also thinking that if they are prolonging one's life, that is actually a good thing, right? Because they're making a family a favor, right? This is a society that doesn't care about the individual at all, right? Because if some people torment you your whole life, you're probably gonna break, right? And if you break, you're probably gonna kill someone, or you're gonna do something that's gonna attract, some lawful problems, right? So the point is, no one wonders why that person ended up killing, right? They all say the one and only thing, right? Their life is so useless that, they always feel that something bad has to also happen to the others, right? But when you're creating your own life and you're preserving it as bad, right? Why do you want other people to also suffer? If you suck at creating a good life, at least go and live somewhere alone. Realize your own mortality. And then when you come back in this society, sick as it is, I assure you that there is literally nothing that can distract you anymore. Unless you're simply a weakling and, well, you fall back into the passion of the, how to put it, well, the comfort zone. But the point is, once you realize, not logically know, once you realize your own mortality, the point is there is simply no more distraction for yourself. Because you simply can't distract yourself anymore. You know that you can't do so many things in this life, and time is short. So obviously distractions aren't good. Why do you think this world is full of distractions? Because these distractions are just like aspirin. They're just like a pill. You take that, and as you indulge in those, they numb you down, right? That's what an aspirin biologically does. It doesn't remove the disease, it doesn't remove the problem, it just kills the pain, right? That's why it's also called, like many other pills, they're called painkillers, right? The solution is there in front of you. It's called actually a painkiller. It's not called a disease killer, right? It's not called a problem killer, right? Like if you want a disease killer, you can go take a freaking vaccine, right? Because that's what those are made for. But if you want something else, right? If you want, to take an aspirin and the disease to go away, you're probably a bit cuckoo, I guess, or most likely not well informed about, let's say pharmaceutical products, okay, or probably both. So the point is, you see, we just pretend that we own things, okay? You don't own anything. And simply, society can always prove you that, right? Don't we live in a world that claims itself in most parts of the world that it is a democracy? Every time you say something bad as the part of the population, you are instantly punished by the state. Every time politicians say something bad, they will crawl out of their, wormholes, and, they will start, pissing their eyes, or they will firmly say, well, it's democracy and everyone has the right to speak, right? So obviously when the state does mistakes, it's a democracy, and when you or the population does something, you're always gonna be demonized, right? Doesn't this sound a bit like religion? Right? If the priest says something, right? They're God on earth, because obviously no one should say anything against them, right? Because that's the embodiment of narcissism, right? Someone is the apex of power and everyone else should just be submissive, right? Doesn't this think a bit of that? I mean, to me it kind of reeks. It's almost unbearable, but okay, everyone has their own level. So the point about these things, right, and why I spoke about, little baby yanderes, is because people are obsessed with owning things. Do you take something with you in your grave, right? We can think about the Egyptians, right? When their pharaohs would die, they would put a lot of their belongings in the grave. Yes, but a physical dead body and some physical things are not gonna make necessary good company, because the physical body is dead and the spirit is gone. Once the spirit is gone, it doesn't need anything else of this physical realm. And this is not because I say so, or, anyone else said so. It's because this is how the universe functions. Everything that is physical has a time, right? When something is physical, it creates a curvature in the straight line of, time, the so-called concept of time. So time no longer goes straight forward, it starts going in a circle. Guess what happens when the circle finishes? Oh yes, that physicality no longer exists. And this applies to planets, this applies to stars, because in case you have forgotten, stars are also physical. Yes, they are mainly gaseous in form, probably they have plasma as well, but they are still physical, right? They are a less tangible way of physical. Let's say that if, technically they are gaseous, right? It's like entering a fog, right? It's not a like fully durable touch, but it is a touch, right? And light again is physical. You might feel a bit funny because people have the impression that if they can't grab anything, that is not physical. I've actually met people with such a way of thinking. And the point is, you can't grab gaseous forms and you can't grab liquid forms because that is their form. But ultimately they have a physical shape, they have a physical structure, they have atoms and all sorts of other smaller particles that create, let's say, the spine of their existence, right? So matter is just, a compressed form of energy. Energy is a compressed form of other things, but let's not go that far. But ultimately the point is, everything that is physical has its end time. So people don't take anything with them in their grave. The only thing that they do actually is their own karma. And possession creates a lot of karma, which you will have to deal with in further lives, right? So if you're thinking that this life was a pain, well, you can imagine a bit about the other lives, especially the more unconscious behavior you exhibit. So you don't own things, right? You are just those things, because when you say you own something, right, you're technically making it an extension of your own self, right? When you buy a TV, right, we have created this society to function on papers, right? Deep down inside, you know that that TV is not yours, right? Think about the state. The state and the powers, right, political powers, right, they're all about control. When it's about control, they're just playing this dumb game that they control people, right? And they can anytime take, what you have, right? Because ultimately you kind of don't own them anyways. If they do take the things, right? Imagine your parents, right? Your parents are the first sign of fuckery in your life, right? The first time, you know, life simply fucks you is usually with your parents, right? Those dumb fucks that probably gave you birth because they actually wanted that, right? Let's actually face the reality. In most people's cases, people just want a quick fuck, and well, it may happen that, the girl remains pregnant, right? The point is, it doesn't matter how or why, but many children nowadays, and always has been like this, many children haven't, been wanted, right? So they kind of end up as broken rags, right? As unwanted dolls. Now the point with life is, well, life has to go on. So the point is, you will have to go on with a lot of pains. Um, so, people are obsessed with control. People think they control things, but when you say you control something, you're making it an extension of your life because you believe ultimately, the reason is, you believe that your life would suck without that, right? You buy yourself a computer because you believe your life would suck without it. And in a way, we can admit that in the age of technology, right, we kind of need a computer. But don't forget that the computer is just a tool that you're making use of in your life. Your friends are also tools, right? Because through your friends, right, well, hopefully you're not using them as tools, but ultimately they are some sort of tool, okay? I don't want to sound narcissistic, but when you are born in this world, everything is a tool that will make your life better. That's how everything should function, right? But people, when they find a hammer, they want to bang their own fingers instead of banging their own nails, right? Not the nail of the fingers, I'm saying the nail that should be banged with the hammer, right? Why are people doing this? Well, another syndrome that I thought of is what I call the lighthouse syndrome. People want to show you that they suffer because they want you to solve their problems, right? This clearly shows that they're not going to assume any responsibility, and if you happen to be dumb enough, or let's say spiritually not wise enough, right, to fix their problems, the point is they will gladly create more problems so that you simply help them more and more, right? That's the embodiment of people pleasing, and obviously demanding people to please you, right? The life cycle of a people pleaser is very simple. They are born a people pleaser, they will please other people until they break, and once they become sick, they feel for the first time what it's like to be people pleased. And guess what happens? Well, they will like it, and they will become the next person who will demand being pleased, right? It's easy peasy. Especially if it is about fully unconscious people, that's always the way, right? If they are waking up, well, there will still be some struggles, right? Because, well, ultimately, they don't want to wake up, right? Like, you're knowledgeable, you're being a dick to others, right? But the idea of you've been going on in life like this, why give up right now, right? That's how so many people are thinking. Gosh, and people tell me that reading people is hard. Yes, reading people is hard because you're simply an ignorant that doesn't want to read yourself. You don't want to understand anything about yourself. You don't want to learn anything about yourself. Once you learn things about yourself, reading others will consequently become easier, right? So you don't own people, right? You just are people, right? The point is, you don't own your parents, right? Because the problem is, people say my parents, right? You don't own them, and they don't own you. No one owns you any favor in this world, and you don't own anyone a favor in this world, right? But obviously people can't accept this because, well, many people embrace the idea of being people pleasers, right? The point is, you should be grateful to your parents for having given birth to you, even if in many cases they may not have been the best angels in your life, but ultimately the point is very simple. Be grateful to them and, well, realize that, well, life has to go on. Following the age of 21, you're automatically gonna feel that you want to go further and further from your parents, not because they've been douchebags with you, but following the age of 18 and 21 respectively, well, naturally speaking, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, you've disconnected, partly, I mean, a lot from your parents, right? Not fully necessarily, but you have disconnected a lot. That is why you will have less and less tendency towards your parents, unless you've made some unhealthy attachments. But isn't this world built on attachments anyways? Ain't this world such a fun? So the point about life is, well, life is just about expansion. People don't want to expand. That is why they will suffer, right? Because expansion, right? Change is the only constant. And obviously expansion as well. So the only problem is that you want people to validate you. The point is you want to own them because, well, obviously you won't ask people nicely to validate you, right? You wouldn't be as little of a douchebag as that, because if you seek validation, you're already a douchebag, okay, at a certain level. If you want to force people to validate you, well, then you're a bigger douchebag, okay? Don't give power to douchebags, because the only thing you'll achieve is making an even better, or let's say an even bigger douchebag, okay? So the point is, you simply are different people. How? Well, in many cases, especially if you are a people pleaser, you are a part, at least, of all the people you people please. How? Well, because when you people please people, right? When you people please, let's actually say it like this because it's obvious. When you people please, the point is, you inherently behave like them, right? Because you have to behave in a certain way to please them, right? So you behave like them. When you behave like other people, you ignore your own uniqueness. When you ignore your own uniqueness, well, technically you are no longer yourself. So you are basically other people, right? Many people, live the way their parents lived even after their parents have died, right? You probably are at an age, or I don't know, from whatever reasons, your abusive mother and or father are no longer alive, but you still have their own mindset, right? Their destructive patterns. Because you have taken those in and you have identified yourself with that. That is unfortunately the case in this world, right? So all this being said, hopefully this was introspective. Feel free to like and subscribe. Feel free to present any idea, question that you have about life, and I might drop a video about it. I simply don't mind being audience driven. You are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Ferenc on board signing out.